Naturalizing in Japan just got even more difficult. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what that means and also give you a quick update about how my journey to naturalization is going. It's not going great. Let's talk about it. So this is the second video in my series inviting you to follow along with my journey towards naturalizing. I was actually supposed to make this video after my second meeting with the Homukyoku. I do have my first video, which I made immediately after my first introductory meeting with the Homukyoku, the Legal Affairs Office, which is the Japanese government agency that handles naturalization. And at the end of that video, I said I'd make a second one once I'd had the second meeting. I did not make that second video. But in this video, I'm going to tell you how the second meeting went. And that took place at the end of March 2026. And I'm also going to tell you how my third meeting went. And that happened on August 3rd, 2026. So in the first meeting, as I explained in the first video, I sat down with my caseworker and he basically asked me a lot of questions to confirm whether I would be able to naturalize, if there were any big kind of issues that were going to stop that happening. Thankfully there weren't. And he gave me a list of documents and other things that I'd have to prepare for the process. The second meeting was to check all the documents from overseas. So they split this up. So at least in the Sendai Homukyoku, and they said, okay, second meeting, we want to check all your overseas documents, and then the third meeting, we'll check your Japan-sourced and self-made documents. So at the second meeting, I had to prepare all my overseas documents. That's things like birth certificates for me, my brother, wedding certificate for my parents, and various other documents that I needed to get from the UK. Thankfully, that went fine. I was able to get all the documents. Actually, I had most of the documents because this isn't my first shot at naturalizing. I actually went through some of the process in 2011 as well. So I had quite a few documents already from that time. As well as getting the documents, I also had to translate the documents. And for this, I used AI. Now, I'm not a big fan of using AI. I don't use AI to produce content or to write things. But for this translation task, it was incredibly effective. So I mainly used Gemini, and I found that with Gemini, I could upload a photo of the British document. And a lot of these documents are kind of handwritten, scrawled things that I couldn't actually read. But the AI was able to read it and then also to translate it into passable Japanese. Now, of course, I did check quite carefully to make sure that the Japanese wasn't weird. I do have a reasonable level of Japanese, and so I was able to check the output from the AI and make sure it was okay, and then format it effectively. And that passed muster for translation. So if you're going through this kind of process or anything similar, AI is actually really good now with this kind of thing. That meeting went more or less the same as the first meeting. So I sat down with my caseworker. We went through all the paperwork. He basically gave me feedback. There was a few things I had to change. There's a few things I had to add. The translations were largely okay, but he wanted me to translate things like the warning at the bottom about how there's penalties for misusing the document and that kind of thing. And also any blank spaces. He also wanted a translation of what that space was for, which is fair enough. And it's something that I was able to update quite easily afterwards. At the end of the meeting, we went through what documents I would need for the third meeting, which is the one I had this week. To prepare for the meeting, I was able to refer to my handy checklist of necessary documents, and basically for that third meeting, I had to mainly get tax documents. Things like my kakute shinkoku, my tax return, my wife's tax return. My wife is a sole proprietor. She has her own business. So I had to get all the tax documents for that business as well. I had to get the deed for my mansion. So I have a condominium, a mansion. I had to go to weirdly, to the same Homukyoku on a different floor and get the deed for that. I had to get a certificate for 1 year's worth of our health insurance payments from the ward office. I had to go into the ward office, get a certificate from them. I had to provide some photos of me and my wife, and this was almost the same as for spouse visas, basically. It's a photo of us together, a few photos in different situations, just to prove that we actually have a relationship. Fortunately, this is quite easy to do. And then I had to create a bunch of documents, and I kind of talked about this in the first video a little bit. So I had to write an application form, which is fairly easy. I had to write a list of family members in Japan and abroad, and list their name, their address, their contact details, whether they approved of me applying to naturalize, and so on. And this was very easy for me because in practice, the only family members here in Japan are my wife and her parents, at least for the scope of this document, and all my family members outside Japan already died. So my parents died, my brother died, so I just had to write their names, their date of death, and that was it for that. The next document was I had to create a CV, a kind of resume, listing all my addresses that I've lived in my whole life, and also all my jobs I've had in Japan and so on. You're also supposed to include any part-time work. Now for me, this was a bit difficult because most of my part-time work was 20 years ago. I don't remember it. I have no way of accessing that stuff. So anything more recent, I have it basically in my email account. I've got a Gmail account, everything's in there. But Gmail only started in like 2008. So anything before that, I don't have any records at all. And my case officer said that was probably okay. So I basically have all my main jobs, and main kind of part-time work, and that's in there. And that's the resume kind of document. That took quite a long time. I also had to create a list of all my international trips, and my caseworker, I'm a bit annoyed about this. Not too annoyed, a little bit annoyed. So my caseworker told me I needed 10 years worth of international trips. Fortunately, my current passport's about 10 years old, so I was able to use the passport to figure out when I'd left the country, and then I used like my calendar and my wife. My wife's got better memory than me. So I used that to figure out what the trips were, where I went, what the purpose of the trips were, and also who was with me on the trips. I had 10 years worth of that. Turns out I'd actually taken 16 foreign trips during that time. So I made a list of all of those. And then when I went into the meeting, the caseworker was like, "Oh, did I tell you 10 years? I actually meant 5. And so that's those 16 trips, and the earlier ones really took quite a lot of effort to figure out. Turned into 6 because obviously the last 5 years, from 2021 to the moment, 2021, 2022, it was still kind of post-pandemic. We weren't doing a lot of traveling, and our travel has really dropped off since then. So only 6 international trips during that time. That would have been much less work, but it's fine. I had the list. I have the list now. It's fine. I had to write an essay in Japanese by hand, saying basically why I want to naturalize, and giving some background and so on. And I did a lot of research online for this, so there's lots of lawyers and scriveners and so on that put examples online. They tell you basically how to write the essay. And then again, I used AI to help me with this. Not so much to write it, but to walk me through the process. So again, I used Gemini. I said, please help me write my essay. And we had an iterative process with this. So it knows quite a lot about me, although all the details are slightly wrong. So it's got my date of birth slightly wrong. It's got the length of time I've been in Japan slightly wrong, and so on. So that was easy to fix. So we went through and fixed all those details. And then I ended up with an essay that I quite liked, actually. And it actually was slightly different to the essay I would have written. But I think it is more effective maybe for this. So took the final draft of that and basically copied it onto paper by hand. And that took quite a long time. Took me maybe an hour or so, hour and a half maybe to do it. You have to do it perfectly. I made 2 mistakes, but obviously this isn't the final. I'm not going to submit that. So I had 2 mistakes. I had 1 kanji mistake, and then at the end, for some reason, I got the date wrong. So you're supposed to put the date of when you wrote it, and I got that wrong. So I had those 2 mistakes on there, but it was pretty encouraging. So it tells me that writing the essay, copying it, is probably gonna be okay. We'll see how that goes. And then the final thing I had to prepare was kind of financial documents. So this is a list of my wife and for me as well, our bank accounts, our investments, our possessions, basically. So it's basically the main bank accounts for both of us. So I put down, my wife has one main bank account. I had to bring the bank book for her, the tsujo. For me, I use online banks, so I use Shinsei and Rakuten, and for those I had to bring printouts of the kind of statements there. And then for our investments, I just did a screenshot of the kind of overall page that shows the amounts and so on. And between me and my wife, we've got a fairly decent amount of savings and investments. And my case officer was a bit surprised by this. So last time when we were talking about salaries, he said, yeah, your salaries are probably okay to fulfill the able to support yourself kind of condition of applying for citizenship. But the savings and investments really cemented that. So yeah, obviously you don't have any financial issues at all. I also had to create a monthly budget. So how much we spend on various things like food, utilities, rent, and so on. And this was really hard because we haven't really had a budget for quite a long time. And again, I went online, I had a look around, and basically you have to say what your income is. And again, we don't have a fixed income. It was roughly. So I took my annual income from last year, divided by 12, and said that's what my income is. Same for my wife. And then all that matters is that it balances. So, we've got our mortgage payment, our mansion kind of utilities and so on, the service fee for the mansion, the maintenance fund fee for the mansion, insurance, all that stuff. And then there's an extra, an other. So you can use the other category to basically cover utilities and healthcare costs and basic random shopping. And then there's a savings category, and basically the savings was extra. So anything that wasn't in the budget was basically going into savings. And all of those documents were accepted by my caseworker in the 3rd meeting. But now here's the very, very mixed part. So the 3rd meeting on one level went really well. So everything, I managed to get all the stuff my caseworker asked for. It was all fine. There was some minor tweaks to some of it, but it was basically fine. And at the end of the meeting, he said, yep, you can probably apply next time you come in. And I was like, great, I can probably get all this stuff done by next week. When can we do this? He's like, well, we're very busy still. So the next available appointment is December 23rd. That's in about 5 months' time. So I was like, okay, I guess we'll be doing it on December 23rd then. And then he was like, well, there's a bit of an issue because the rules have changed. So I'm going to need some extra documents from you as well. And this is where things took a turn for the worse. So basically I've managed to get all the documents that were originally required. So when I went in to talk to them last year, all the stuff that we talked about then is completely fine. I got it all together. It all passed muster and I'm ready to apply. But from April, obviously, there have been some changes to what is required in order to naturalize. And one of them in particular means that I'm not sure that my application is going to go through. So basically what my caseworker told me, they have a new pamphlet. The old pamphlet is, it's on a nice card, it's very well made. This is like a paper photocopy. They've obviously knocked it together at short notice. And basically my caseworker told me three Three big things have changed since April. Obviously, the last meeting we had was late March, so he didn't have a chance to tell me about these things until this week. So the first thing that's changed, and this has been in the news, so I knew about it, is that the minimum amount of residency, so you have to have the number of years you have to have lived in Japan in order to be able to apply for naturalization, has gone up from 5 years to 10 years. So now you have to have lived in Japan for 10 years in order to apply to naturalize. And I'd heard about that, that's fine. I've been here 26 years, it's fine, no problem. The other thing he mentioned is that the third condition, which is to have good behavior, has been very much, it's become much stricter. And this is referring to mainly payment of taxes and also traffic offences. Now, traffic offences, I was dinged by a little bit in that I have had some traffic offences in the past. I've had some speeding tickets, I've had a parking ticket and so on. And I had one serious speeding ticket where I was doing 45 over on the highway. So basically there's a stretch of highway where the speed limit goes down to 80. And I was doing 125 and I hit a traffic camera and I lost my license temporarily. Now this was a very long time ago. This was over 15 years ago. And so my caseworker said it's probably fine. For the application, you have to submit a driving record. So you get this from the police and they only ask for 5 years worth. So it should be okay. Now the taxes is the problem. So in this third meeting, at the end of the third meeting, my caseworker said, okay, I need some extra tax documents from you. And there were a few things. So he said, right, I need an extra year of health insurance payment certification. And that's completely fine. So I went into the ward office yesterday. Immediately after my meeting, I went to the ward office and I got that extra year. So initially they only asked for 1 year, so Reiwa 7. I went and got Reiwa 6, that's 2 years worth, that's fine. The next thing is 5 years worth of local inhabitants taxes, both for me and for my wife. So they wanted proof of payment and then proof of how much we paid. So that's 2 different documents for both of us, 5 years worth. This was actually really expensive because you have to pay for each year separately. So the whole thing cost me like 6,000 yen to get these 5 years of documents for me and my wife. But that was fine. Now, the next thing I had to get was our complete pension records. And I had to go to the pension office for this. I got mine quite easily. I needed to get my wife to sign something in order to get hers. So I'm going to go back in the next couple of days and get hers as well. So far, so good, that's fine. Even the stricter requirements is fine. And then the bombshell. So for those local inhabitants tax payments, they also want to get proof of when the payments were made. So they want proof that we made the payments on time for the last 5 years or so. And because we are not employees, because our employer is not doing this for us, we're doing it by ourselves. We get the bills in the post and we pay the bills ourselves. And so basically we don't have that information. We don't have the receipts for these things. I don't keep random pieces of paper for no reason. So basically, I don't have any proof of when I made these payments. Now, when I went into the ward office to get our certificates, I asked them if they could provide proof of when the payments were made, and they said they couldn't. Basically, that's not something they track. It's not something they issue a certificate for, so they can't help. And of course, I knew about this issue for PR. So this has been a thing for people applying for permanent resident for a few years now. So basically you have to prove when you made your tax payments, your pension payments, your whatever payments. And if you're doing it yourself, then generally that means keeping receipts and so on. But up until this week, this was not something that I needed to do for permanent residence. So it's very much out of the blue. And at the moment, at least, it seems like there's not really any way I can prove this. Now, personally, I think this requirement is a little bit stupid, to be honest. Like, does it really matter when the payments were made as long as they have been made? As long as you're up to date with your taxes, you've paid your taxes in full, we can prove that easily. Why is this extra step in there? What purpose does it achieve? I'm not even sure what the purpose is, but it looks like I'm not going to be able to do that. But my case officer still said that I could apply in December. So what I'm planning to do is to get everything else together for December, and hopefully I'll still be able to apply at that point, even without this extra proof of when these payments were made. And I'm just hoping that the Homukyoku is a little bit less strict on this than immigration is. So with the immigration office, anecdotally at least, not having this proof of when you made your payments is an instant rejection for permanent residency. But again, the conditions for immigration and the conditions for the Homukyoku are slightly different. Immigration is very much swamped, so I imagine that any excuse to deny an application and get it out of the queue is welcome to them. I read online a few times that the approval rate for permanent residency applications recently is only around 50%. So about 50% of people get rejected, and a lot of them are getting rejected for these new reasons, like not having proof of when you paid your stuff. Naturalization is different. Naturalization, far fewer people are allowed to apply, and only about 5% of applications are rejected. And so quite possibly, and this is me just basically hoping, they may be a bit more lenient on that and say, okay, so everything else is fine, so we'll overlook that one thing. But I'm also getting ready for my application being rejected. And basically my plan B at that point is I will wait 5 years. So I'll pay my taxes for 5 years. I will keep the receipts. And then once I have 5 years worth of receipts, assuming nothing else has changed, I'll apply again in 2032. But before then, I am planning to go in on December 23rd, bring all my stuff, make my formal application, maybe have the interview, and then just see where that goes. So stay tuned. I will be making another video probably after that meeting where I submit, or perhaps I'm told I can't submit my final application. And yeah, that will be the next step on the journey. So a little bit disappointing. I must admit I was not in the best mood on Monday after my meeting. I kind of came back and I was like, I was actually planning to make this video after the meeting, but I wasn't feeling up to it. I was actually a little bit depressed at that point, but I'm feeling better now. I feel like I've already done 95% of the work. So I might as well do the last 5%, go in, apply, maybe have the interview, and see how it goes. So let me know if you have any questions about the process, about what's going on. If you're currently in the same situation, let me know how it's going. We're going to have a chat on RetireJapan TV in August with Derek Westman, who is an awesome guy living in Japan who just finished naturalizing. So we're going to talk to him about his naturalization journey. Join us for that, or if you're watching this after August, look it up on the RetireJapan live section. So on the RetireJapan YouTube page, if you go to live, you can find all our RetireJapan TV episodes. Go back and watch that one as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.